have to speak a little bit louder than me because the mic's closer to me.
All right, that's fine.
That's a technical observation. Lovely.
Hello and welcome back to another Actors on Set podcast. My name is Nathan.
I'm Zak.
And today we are joined by Director Jane Ashmore.
Hey.
Hello Jane, how are you?
I'm really well, thanks, boys. I've just spent all day tutoring on Masterclass at the Actors Studio. So I thought to myself, do you know what I really want to do? Just kick back right now and get on a podcast with Nathan and Zak. Or Zak Chat.
And unfortunately there's no wine available to us here this evening, so it's coffee only.
And water.
That's stimulating us. But today we're going to be talking a little bit about Jane's career, working with different actors, mostly in multicam and TV shows like EastEnders, Corrie, Emmerdale, and how that translates to working on set, and a bit about Jane's workshop that she runs here on the Masterclass, and some upcoming filming that we've got on the Showreel week that Jane, hopefully, if she doesn't abandon us and get a better offer somewhere else to do, is going to be directing on the London Masterclass later this year. So all of that's to come on the Actors on Set podcast. So Jane, you started off as an AD, and obviously over the past few years have been progressing into directing some of your own work, such as your short film Love, which we're going to come on to later. That transition on shows like Corrie, Emmerdale, these fast-paced multicam shows, moving from AD to director, what was the process for you? And also, I think some of the things that we talked about earlier in class were the disciplines that actors need that you know so much about as an AD that you can carry with you when you come to directing.
Okay, right. Well, to address it in order, I was an AD of every flavour. I started as a runner, then I was a third, then I was a second, then I was a first. And I was a first for actually quite a long time. I don't really like to talk about it too much because I like to kind of convince people that I'm a little bit fresh to the field than I actually am. Yeah. But I have actually this is my 30th year in the biz. And I was an AD for the first 22 of those, as in third, second, first. And I was a first AD for nearly 17 years. Yeah. And the transition, trying to become a director when you're an AD, I wasn't necessarily an AD for 17 years because I didn't want to be a director for 17 years. I was trying to kind of break through the glass ceiling. So a lot of my struggle to transition was basically getting people, getting an opportunity, first of all, and then also getting people to see me as something other than what I had been doing for a long time. So it's difficult because we don't live in a meritocracy. And if you want to, progress in your career, what you have to do is you have to make the change yourself. So I made the decision around about 2014 that I really didn't want to be a first AD anymore. And so I was looking for something else to do, and I applied to go on a BBC director's course. I like to call it my conversion course. But I had applied for a couple of these before and I'd never made it to even the long list. So I was a little bit kind of sceptical about it. But it turned out that it was my turn, it was my time. And so I went on the director's course, the multi-camera director's course at EastEnders in 2016. And from that point, I have always been a director. So I was able to direct a block of EastEnders after that. And then EastEnders were very good to me and they kept me on for a couple of years, really. And I kind of nearly 30 episodes in that time. And then, of course, I had to fly free, and I had to kind of fly the nest. And so since then, I've been lucky enough to be able to go to Coronation Street and direct, and go to Emmerdale. And now, I feel like I kind of go around the shows a little bit more.
People always sort of don't quite get the role of the AD when they're first on set, do they? Especially newer actors, they're like, oh, I thought that was the director. Because there's a lot of communication that happens between the first and the cast.
Yeah, completely. And particularly on the kind of shows that we're talking about, with your multi-camera show and your fast turnaround drama, the ADs are going to be communicating with the actors an awful lot. The discipline one of the disciplines we were talking about today in class is that what we do first of all when the actors come on set is we always have a line run, and that's with the director. So the director has a line run with the actors, and then they block the actors, and then pretty much what happens at that point, the director then kind of withdraws to the monitor, and then the AD is then in charge of the floor. And to a greater or lesser extent, the director may then channel notes through the AD to the floor, and that happens really on your multi-camera show more than on your single camera show, just simply because we have the communication of the talkback. So you can just say, can you pass on this note? So the director would say that, and the AD would go in their ear and then go in with a script and say that this is what you want to do. And not least because also the script supervisor would be in the gallery in a multi-camera environment. In a single camera environment, of course, the video village is going to be a lot closer. We're not going to be communicating with talkback, so all communication has got to be done in person anyway. So the director is much more likely to get up from the monitor and come in,
set and slow things down,
set and give the note,
or just shout from when they're sitting.
Yeah. Like that, But so I think that that is certainly true in. Definitely in a multi-camera environment, that the AD is very much in the thick of it. And so in terms of transitioning to become a director, certainly for me, that wasn't a difficult transition to make on a multi-camera set, because, it's the language you speak, it's the walk that you walk, you know exactly what you've got to do, you know what everybody else is doing. Mm-hmm. So I found it reasonably easy to transition from being an AD to being the director in a multi-camera environment. In a single camera environment, it's broadly speaking, it's the same, it's just slower, from my point of view as a director. And also from my point of view as an AD, it's just the time that it takes to, move around the setups, is the time that it takes, basically. But whereas obviously you've got much more immediacy in the multi-camera environment. It's pretty much you think it and it's ready to go.
Yeah.
With you now being a director, do you find it hard letting someone AD you?
No, not at all. Not at all. But I am quite demanding about that, in that I want you to be, if you're going to be ADing for me, I want you to be a good AD. Mm-hmm. But I'm not here to do anybody else's job for them. I'm pretty much, I'll go along with the plan mostly, But if I think that there's something which could be done better, if it were done, if we rescheduled slightly, or if we did it, in a different order, or if we approached it from a different way, I would make that clear. But I would usually make it clear at the pre-production stage. So I would say, look, actually, of these two scenes, I'm actually going to shoot these both in the kitchen, and this one is in the living room. They're not all in the living room, so it might be better to shoot these two together and then that one, So I would make little suggestions like that. But no, pretty much I just sit back and let it happen. I've done my time.
When I'm ADing for you in the summer, I'll make sure I'm all brushed up and I'm ready to go.
Exactly. You have a pencil, you have chewing gum, Yeah, exactly. That you've scheduled it properly.
Yeah, well, exactly.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, you take control of the floor. You use your big voice. That's all I ask from you.
That's really exciting. We were talking about how excited we are to get you in.
Yeah.
So we were speaking about you being the director, and we just want to talk about how you coming onto EastEnders, Coronation Street and things like that with characters that have got a lot of backstory and a lot of things to jump in. I just want to know how sort of you work with that, how you work with the characters that have already been pre-built and have got a lot, so you've got a lot to catching up to do and figuring out where they come and how you bring your own spin to the episodes that you're in control of.
Yeah. It's a lot easier if you really know the show. So, for example, because I have such a history with EastEnders, it's a lot easier for me to do it on EastEnders than it is for me to do it on Emmerdale or Coronation Street, because I've worked on it, I started working at EastEnders in 2006, and I was also, I have to full disclosure, I've been a massive fan of EastEnders all my life. So basically, I was having a conversation with the exec Chris Clenshaw the other day, and we were talking about some stuff, and I said, "Oh, look, did you see that he doesn't like the fourth wall in the cafe?" Right. And I said, "I've got to put the fourth wall in, Chris, because I've got too many people in the scene and we've run out of tables, because he really doesn't really like it." And so he said, "Don't worry, make it more interesting, ask the art department to put something on it. And so they did this great montage. They did this little, they've framed up pictures of Albert Square and Bridge Street, kind of historical pictures. Right. And so right behind Steve McFadden's head in this scene was a picture of the cafe when it was Ali's Cafe. And me and Chris Clench, we just went off on what we were like about my favourite scene in the cafe. And I was like, do you remember the poker game where Den had a full house like this? And we were just like, oh, do you remember when Mehmet, Ali's brother with the big moustache like this? And we sort of went down the old rabbit hole. So in answer to your question, Zach, it's very easy for me to do on an EastEnders because I know a lot about the history of the characters. On something like Emmerdale and Corrie, I try not to get too bogged down in kind of the minutiae of the deep history, but it is important obviously to kind of catch up with the recent history. So usually what I would do is, if I'm going up to do a block, I would watch on ITV Hub or iPlayer or whatever. I'd watch some of the episodes that had happened recently, and if you have the time, you know, to read some of the scripts that are in advance of your own, but also, you know, what you've got to remember is that the actors playing the characters, they've inhabited those characters for years. So it's important to kind of collaborate with them and to just sort of tap into their knowledge. And so you not to be afraid of just saying, look, you know, tell me about, you know, what's happening with you know, with your character at the moment. What's happening with you know, what's happening with Betty? What's happening with Betty at the moment? You know, and so that's how to tap into it, really. You know?
Or you can always come to the office and have a chat with Helen, who's always up to date on everything that's happening in all of the soaps.
That's true. In actual fact, usually when I come and I speak to Helen, I learn a little something about the show I'm going on to. She did that to me last year. I said I was going to Emmerdale and she went, ooh, this and this and this. I thought, better make a note of that. I did not know that at all. Yeah.
So when you're working with some of these established actors, like you say, they've been there a long time, they know their characters inside out. What are some of the key skills that they bring to set that make your life, and sort of coming back to the AD thing, the crew's life, a lot easier than going into, for example, you know, you get on set of whether it be a short film or a feature film, and it's like, right, everyone's sort of finding their feet. These soap actors have a sort of a unique skill set, really, compared to a lot of actors. Yeah. What are those, and how does it make your life as director or in the past AD easier?
Well, I mean, to get onto the kind of the history of the characters, naturally, if somebody's been playing a character for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you know, and in some cases, although not so much anymore, I think we've kind of got to the end of the run of people who've been in from the beginning at EastEnders, and certainly I think at Coronation Street, I think they've long passed that, haven't they? But so naturally they come and they know what their character's about, and they know, you know, where they've come from, and they have all of that within them. But I mean, the ones that last a long time and the ones that kind of flourish in it are the people that can, you know, just kind of take the pace, that, you know, can learn the scenes and turn them around, you know, and, you know, the ones who've been around for a long time, they have an almost magical capacity for reading a scene, memorising that scene, doing that scene, that's gone, next. But if you ask them what happened in the previous scene, gone. Yeah, because you have to ski the bit of the mountain that you're on. You know, you don't keep looking back up the piste, do you? You've just got to kind of, you know, so they have this kind of way of putting it to memory, then putting it to bed. And I think that's, you know, that's what keeps it going. Because if you hadn't got a bunch of people around you who could do that, you know, get very sticky very quickly.
Yeah.
How do you think that's obtained? Do you think that's just through years of doing it, or do you even find that with some people who've come soon and who have been on it a week and they pick those things up? Is it just, do you think, a way of learning it, or do you think it's just repeat?
I think it's practice. I think that, you know, it's very unusual to find somebody who kind of, you know, parachutes in and they've got a photographic memory, and so luckily, you know, they're able to run at it. I think for a lot of people it is practice. But what you've also kind of got to remember is that scripts in soap operas can be quite repetitive. So although you are learning 10 scenes in a day, those scenes are going to be from episodes that are on different days of the week. And actually, sometimes what's being said is a little bit similar to what's been said already. So when you're in a story, you probably will find that your scenes are running along similar themes all the time. So it may be a little bit easier to learn that than it would be to, say, learn the equivalent, which might be, you know, 3 of Hamlet's soliloquies where he's jumping around all over the place. You know, it's not a stream, you know, it's not sort of a stream of consciousness. You know, the stories are, you know, it's repeat.
Yeah, and I guess, and the characters are repeating. So I guess if you're, as you say, the actors who've worked on there for a long time, they sort of would almost know what their character would say and how they would react in these certain situations. So the lines might be like, oh yeah, you know, that's what I would imagine they would reply to.
And I think also what happens is after the actors have been in the role for a while, the writers do respond to that and start to write for them, so that you know, you may find that the writers are slightly, you know, they're instrumental in putting the kind of words into the people's mouths of those people, you know.
Yeah, the whole thing evolves as one.
Yeah. Completely. You know, but I mean, I have to say, I was talking to the photographer, the press. We have, you know, photographers on site who come down and they take the pictures for the Radio Times and whatnot. And Jack, the photographer, was down, and I was doing a scene on Friday morning, and he came and I said, "Oh, what are you here for? Are you sure you're here for me? Because this is a pickup." And he went, "No, I'm definitely here for Stacey and Eve in the Baps van." And I was like, "Right, like this." And then he was looking at the scene and he went, "Have you already done this? Is this a reshoot?" And I went, No, brand new scene. We just a pickup. We dropped it the other day." And he was like, "But I swear I came." I was like, "Yes, of course you did. You came the other day and we had pretty much exactly the same scene, but it was from a different episode, different block perhaps. But yeah, the 2 women were standing in the Baps van, flipping burgers, chatting, you know what I mean? So, you know, even amongst ourselves, you know, we have people who kind of drop into the set on their missions around the day and they kind of go, "Wait a minute, didn't we just do that?" And you're like, I can see why you would think that, but
the audience enjoy that, don't they? Because it's that comfort of knowing what they're going to expect when they're watching these sorts of shows.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are certain scenes which, for example, I mean, obviously they wear a uniform in this Baps van. So whenever you visit this van, the girls are always going to have their hair up and they're always going to be wearing their aprons. So there is, unfortunately, a similarity all the time, you know. But you know, it can happen with other kinds of uniform as well. If you can imagine Cat and Alfie, he's always in a, you know, a loud shirt and she's always in a leopard print dress. You know what I mean? You know, over the years you can kind of go, okay, a very familiar scenario, you know, but yeah.
Now, before we take a quick breather, favourite scene that you've directed on, whether it be Emmerdale, Corrie or EastEnders?
Oh no, I think that would be really hard.
Well, one from each.
Oh gosh, I know what you want me to say. I'm not going to say it. No.
Is that it?
No, I know what you're going to say. I know what you're expecting me to say. Well, that is a good scene. Really good scene. But, you know, you have the benefit of, the brilliant thing about directing soap operas is that, you know, you get to do so many different things. You get to do really great emotional stuff. I've just been doing a block, which I can't speak about at the moment, but it's going to hit the screens, you know, in February, end of February, start of March, and so heartbreaking, you know, so beautifully played. You love it. I love a bit of heartbreak, as you know. I mean, I've been crying all week. I was in my exec review on Friday, and the boss even had to say to me, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Fine." But then you also get to do action sequences, you know. I mean, you know, I remember I saw off Richard Blackwood from EastEnders, you know, picked him up in a car, and then we did this great driving sequence to get, you know, in actual fact, all we did was we went around the lot and then we went around the car park a bit and then we kind of went to the back of the lot and, you know, pulled up in a screech there. But, you know, he was taken at gunpoint and, you know, and then the inference was that, the implication was that he was going to be shot. You know, so you get to do all these kind of crazy car chase things and stuff like that. And then other times you get to do really great comedy, you know, so it's really difficult to choose.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to take a quick breather and we'll come back to talk about newcomers to soaps and what they can expect when arriving on their first day and how they can get there in the first place. And Jane's recent short film, Love. We'll be back in 2.
With lots of the foamy milk. Lots of the foamy milk. With lots of the foamy milk. And chocolate on the right-hand side.
You're new. You're very beautiful.
But you say that to all the ladies.
Can I have a cappuccino, please? With lots of the foamy milk and chocolate on the right-hand side. Do lots of men come up to you on the tube to tell you that you're beautiful?
Oscar, I'm going to be late.
Has anyone ever told you you look like a gazelle?
One cappuccino for you, my love.
Is she your girlfriend?
Yeah.
Mate!
Calm down, mate.
I'm not your mate!
So on today's workshop with some of the students on our masterclass, some of the things that we talk about, probably more on tomorrow's session, but is how much these shows shoot and how many opportunities there are available for sort of up-and-coming actors. One of the things that we talk about is they've got to be represented if they're wanting to go into the likes of ITV, BBC, fine, but some small roles often come up, don't they? We were sort of saying, what are the skills that they need to bring to set? What is it that they should be bringing so that they can make an impact? If they just get a half a page, they go in for that small part, how can they make an impact so that they've got a better chance of the casting department going, oh, they're quite good. Why don't they? Let's get them back and develop their character into something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it might not even be that they develop the character that you come to do the first time round into something. You might be a visiting artist at EastEnders and make a splash when you're there. So then people start thinking, well, how can we, can we find room for this person in another role? And it's not unusual for people to have been a guest artist in something like EastEnders or, even your Casualties or whatever. Not unusual for people to come as a guest artist and then to, a couple of years later, come back as, a full-time character, but not necessarily the character that they played before. I think that it's the same rule for everything, really, which is that what you need to be able to do is you need to learn your lines. You need to come on set and be able to deliver what's in the script, basically. So that could be a lot, that could be a little. And sometimes a little is harder than a lot because you've got, only 3 lines or something like that. And, it's gone in the blink of an eye. But the important thing is to know your script, know your cues, so that you're comfortable when you get on set. Because the worst thing that can happen for you, I think, as an actor, is to come onto the set and feel like you're on the back foot. So if you've done all the preparation that you can, so that you know what you've got to say and you know what's being said around you, that puts you into a strong position to then explore the character or to explore the story, to explore the scenario. Which you can't do if you're unsure of what you're saying or what's going on around you or what's being done, So that's the key. Often when you're coming as a guest artist to a show, you don't have a lot of story or a lot of backstory. And I think it's important for everybody to just have a little think about what their character is. Now, in the episodes of EastEnders I've just done, I had a guest artist who came in to play a journalist. And so she and I had a little chat and, I said to her, I think your character's, really ambitious. And she said, yes, I think so too. So we had a little conversation about what was motivating her character in the scenario. And, what was motivating her was that she was quite ambitious and she saw an opportunity with the story that she'd come to cover to make it a little bit bigger than it was. And so it's just little things, you don't need a big history for your character. You don't need to know that I went to journalism school in Prague and, I'm supporting my mother with Alzheimer's, that's probably going a little bit too far. But I think it's important to kind of just think, okay, what is it that my character is wanting from this situation.
The immediate thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and just think about that scenario a little bit. But, you may not get given that by, the show that you're on. You may just have to kind of think a little bit about that for yourself, basically. But it's just about helping you kind of inform the way that you play it then. In another scenario, maybe you're playing a journalist who's a bit world weary, who gets sent out to take pictures of, the school prize giving day or something like that. So maybe, that's a different kind of energy that you would bring to your character. So it's just about sort of reading the script and having a think about, what is the situation of my character? What energy, therefore, do I need to bring to this? Or what energy am I going to bring to that? So, yeah.
Yeah, we spoke a bit about character development. We speak a lot to our actors about the environment and how the environment you're going to be in is very chaotic and everyone's working around you at 100 million miles an hour and things can get chaotic, and they need to be able to take themselves away out of that situation to then focus on whatever they're delivering, because if they're delivering quite a slow paced and a quite intimate scene, but yet what's going on around them is completely carnage. Is there any sort of tips or anything like that you think that would help actors take away and be in their own space and while this is all going
Whilst
on?
everyone's screaming and shouting.
What you will find generally is that, let's say we need to do some lighting, we need to move some walls and so forth. Usually what would happen anyway is that the artist would then be removed from the set. So you would say, great, we're going to ask you guys to step out for a few moments while we get this done. And so I think it's really just about sort of taking the opportunity when you get those moments to step out to just, kind of refocus and have a little think about what you're doing. It may be that, you're not feeling overwhelmed by it. It may be the natural fact that that's a time for you to talk to the other people in the scene, to kind of make bonds with the other actors. But also it may be that it's an opportunity for you and them to run lines together. So there are things which will be going on, dependent, I guess, upon what the nature of the scene is. But I think that the busyness that we perceive, the carnage that's going on, I think that what is important for visiting artists to understand is that it doesn't seem like carnage to us in our working environment, but it can be quite alien and quite disconcerting for somebody who's new to it or somebody who doesn't get to do it all the time. Because what we've got to remember is that even a successful actor, even somebody who gets cast in lots of things all the time, would probably, if they're visiting artists in sets, they're going to be rocking up to Casualty for 2 days. They're going to have a day on, Game of Thrones, or 2 days here, or maybe they'll go somewhere for 2 weeks. But even your successful jobbing actors aren't working 48 weeks of the year in the same way that people who work on crew or in the cast of, these soap operas are. So, that's what the problem, if you want to perceive its problem is that it's just the infrequency of visiting the environment and the length of time spent in the environment. So, it's just about, finding ways that you just manage that for yourself, really.
Yeah. I mean, we've said it before, I always find it is, the crew are working quickly so that we can spend time during takes, not for the cast to end up rushing their scene because everything around them is happening really quickly. So it's that disconnection, but awareness of the set.
Completely. And I think that it's really important. I mean, sometimes I find, in fact, often I find when I have a visiting artist on set, and I had it with a really great visiting artist she just had about 3 lines, but it's a part that's going to make a splash. Everybody's going to love it. It's a great little part. But I could see that she was catching, the speed of, proceedings. And so I went in and gave her a note and said, I really enjoy this character. I'm really enjoying what you're doing. And I want the audience to enjoy it as well. And I want you to enjoy it. So just breathe into it and just slow it down. There's no rush. You know what I mean? Let us hear what you've got to say. And that's important sometimes. I think, we've just got to, remember not to, as actors, they've got to remember not to kind of catch that panic, and just to remember what they're there for.
That comes with like them knowing terminology and what's happening. And as you say, if walls are coming out, lighting are being changed, they sort of hear, oh, right, take eye line and things like this. And right, we're coming into this sort of, you're close up now and they're like, all right, okay, and I've got this, maybe I'll have a couple minutes now so I can go off and do that.
But I think it's the questions that I get asked a lot when I'm doing the masterclass here are about technical terms from people. Actors will come up to me after an exercise and say, could you explain to me what a deep 2 shot is? Yeah. Somebody asked me today about, I'd mentioned twice that, it's nice if you can find that position because the light is modelling you very nicely. Well, what do you mean by modelling? I said, well, it's just, it's picking up the contours of your face. It's great for, I think, actors to get involved in these kind of classes just because, you're going to get hit with a lot of techno speak, which, you know, it will prepare them, you know, and help them to prepare for when they encounter it on set.
And it's a time they can ask you as well, as you said,
Yeah.
you've got the free time. And I think, especially today, you can always find the people with theatre background when you do the upstage and downstage.
Yeah.
You can tell the people who have done theatre, they instantly know, and some people are like, wait, what?
What does she mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
If I go
Completely.
upstage, what's that mean?
But, you know, until you get told what an eye line is and how to take your eye line, you know, and, you know, I think people who've been in theatre, you know, when we sort of say first positions and things like this, they've got a pretty good idea of what that means, you know, starters, you know, on your, you know, whatever, all of that. So, yeah, it's important, I think, you know, because you can't ask those questions necessarily when you're on set because there's nobody to ask them, you know. I mean, you might have a friendly AD like me or Nathan back in the days when I was a friendly AD. You know, before I was an unfriendly director. but you know, it's sometimes difficult for people to identify on set that you are, you know, new to it, or that you may not have the experience. There may be an assumption when you walk in as a professional actor that you do have experience of being in that scenario, that you know, that it's taken as read that you know what's being said. But you can, you know, you can find out, you can you know, you can get yourself up to speed with a techno speak here at the Actors Studio.
But just briefly back to the casting before we move on.
Yeah.
We had a question that came up today which I thought was quite an interesting one, because it comes up quite a lot, especially with international students, which we
Yes.
get a lot here. And that is, oh, you know, I'm from wherever it may be, you know, in Europe, I'm from Poland, I'm from Germany, I'm from the States. You know, are there parts for me on these shows in the UK? And it's something that comes up, and we always think, well, yeah, of course, you know, if there's a part for you, there is. I heard the tail end of what you were responding to that, but what are your thoughts on international talent in British soap?
There are parts to be had, 100%. Part of the question I was being asked earlier was, am I okay living abroad, living in a different country? Will I get called for a casting? The short answer to that is you would need to have a UK base. They are not going to fly you over for a small part on EastEnders or Coronation Street. So you would need to have a UK base, and realistically you need to have UK representation. Without UK representation, the BBC and ITV are not coming calling, okay? So that's an important factor. You need to get representation in the UK and have an address that you say, yes, this is my address in the UK, this is where I can stay when I come to do my part on EastEnders. Now, in terms of castings, because everything's done remotely these days, it's not a barrier to do an audition tape if you're in a different country, not a barrier to do a Zoom audition if you're in a different country. And a lot of the stuff isn't done in the room anymore. So I haven't done an in-person audition with an actor not since before COVID, okay? And of actors that I know, they, you know, professional actors that, you know, my friends, I only know of a couple who've had an in-person casting in the last year, okay? You know, and they might have had one each. And those in-person castings invariably only come after a tape, okay? So, yes, you can, as an international actor, get a part in a UK-based show. However, unless you are able to do an actual English accent or an actual regional British accent, or, you know, a Scottish, national, Welsh, you know, Irish accent, then the chances are you're not going to get cast as a part of an English, British, you know, Irish person, okay? But you can still be cast, but your character will be a person who's maybe from Europe, you know? So I cast people, let's say if I'm going to cast a doctor, I'm happy. The NHS is entirely populated by European doctors, isn't it? And European nurses, and nurses from all over the globe, and medical professionals from all over the globe. So there's nothing stopping you, coming into a show and taking any role in any profession, you know, representing any profession that is, you know, staffed or manned by, any number of European people. So I think that all we've got to do is just sort of separate ourselves a little bit from the idea that if I'm Polish, am I only going to get Polish parts? Okay, if you're Polish, you can get Polish parts, but you could also get parts where the character could be Polish, or, from Uruguay or from wherever, you know what I mean? So, you know, just in the same way that we are striving to be more kind of gender blind and more kind of colour blind about things, we can look at roles and say this person could be a man or a woman. They could be of any ethnicity. They could be of, of any European derivation or from any country. The character is the character. The character is somebody who is serving detective sergeant in the Metropolitan Police. Their point of origin is up for grabs, isn't it? You know what I mean? You've just got to give a cracking read.
And I think it's an interesting point, actually, because the British soaps really try and narrate what's happening in the UK.
Absolutely.
And, as the UK becomes more diverse, with more diverse talent, there's all sorts of characters up for grabs, like you say, in these shows, from all different walks of life, different backgrounds, different, disabilities being represented as well.
Completely. I mean, there's nothing stopping you. Let's say, I've got to, we've got a scene at Wolford High next week, and we want to see, Amy Branning's teacher. Well, Amy Branning's teacher could be from anywhere in the world, couldn't she or he? It's not a problem. There's not a barrier, but the barrier you have is your actual logistical location in terms of how far they're prepared to go to get you on the show. Because nobody's going to spend the money when there are people who are, around the corner. I mean, even economically speaking, for instance, the northern soaps tend to, draw from people who live, nearer to Manchester, nearer to Leeds, and the same is broadly true of EastEnders and certainly true, I think for River City and so on. You know what I mean? They're drawing from the pool of people who are nearest to them, but that doesn't dictate what accent they speak with.
Now, moving on to the short film Love, which, how many awards now? Your Twitter is always an array of laurels.
Yeah, we've won, and I think I don't want to say that I've lost count because I haven't. But there are some that I don't count. It's not that I don't count them, but there are some which are sort of an amalgam of awards. But over 30, we won over 30 awards with the film.
Well, that's brilliant. Yeah. And I mean, you shot it, it's a little while ago now, a couple of years.
Yeah, we started shooting in 2019, but then we were a bit kind of, we got caught up a bit in the COVID thing. So we shot in the late summer of 2019, the first location, and we shot at EastEnders. So the cafe, there's a cafe in it.
Telling me about this.
Yeah, that's actually at EastEnders. So it's the second fiddle cafe, EastEnders. It's where you go when you need to make a drug deal, or meet your lover who also lives on the square but isn't your husband. Yeah, so it's around. It used to be around the back.
Around Drama Lane.
And so we shot that. We shot 2 days there for that. And then Jules, who was in the film, who plays the lead character in the film, Oscar, he used to be a regular on Holby City. Yeah. So we were in negotiation with Holby to go and shoot like his flat, his bedroom and stuff there. They used to have a set that they didn't use an awful lot, which was called the Doctor's Flat. And so we were going to go and shoot in there. We were just negotiating with them a day to go and do it. But it kind of all snowballed into lockdown, I'm afraid. And so we got locked down. So we didn't end up shooting the second 2 days until the summer of 2020, and again the late summer of 2020. So I think we were just coming out of lockdown. I think it was like, I want to say off the top of my head, it was like July or something, really early July, that we were able to shoot. And we shot on two consecutive weekends. So we shot while the pubs were still closed. We shot in the pub car park of a pub in Highgate, and then we shot the exterior of the flat just up the road from that. And then the following Saturday, we shot his bedroom, which we shot across the hall from the producer's flat. They had an Airbnb, which they hadn't had anybody in. Her neighbours, owned the flat and Airbnb'd it. And they hadn't had anybody in because of COVID. So she just sort of called and said, look, because you haven't got anybody in, would you mind very much if I shot filming your flat? Yeah. And they were like, yeah, fine, don't make a mess. Yeah. So we were able to shoot there, and then at a cafe that was close to Gemma, who wrote it and starred in it with Jules Her House. But again, we were able to shoot in that cafe because at the time they weren't able to have customers in. So they were closed.
How did that break affect the characters, you and this whole story in general? How did that how did you after that get back together and think, right, got to pick up where
You know, I was really worried about that because and at the time I was really worried about it because I thought I'm not quite sure, that we're going to be able to kind of keep this vibe going, and not least because when we shot at EastEnders, naturally we had access to lots of equipment. Everything was there. We had lights and all sorts of stuff like that. And then when we went on location, particularly when we picked up and went on location, I mean, we were shooting in COVID. We had to quarantine the props and stuff like that. We weren't allowed to be close to each other. So you can see, if you've ever, I don't think you've actually watched my film, and I'm very sorry. I should send you a link so you can. But in the final scene, it's set in a car park, and they're very far apart from one another. Have you seen my film?
I've seen that. I know this. I've seen bits and bobs. Yeah.
I haven't seen it. No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Zach. It's a great film.
Fine.
We could have sat and
It's fine.
pretended we had.
It's fine.
Yeah, I know,
you
but
would
then
have
I
asked us
remembered.
questions.
Then I remembered I hadn't sent it to you. But you'll see there's a scene near the end of the film where he comes into the car park behind the CAF, and you can see the distance between people. But one of the problems we had, and this was the first day back of shooting after COVID, was that we had asked an actor who's in Hollyoaks, to play the boyfriend of Daisy's character, and of Gemma's character Daisy. But obviously she couldn't kiss him. Yeah. Okay, so she had to ask her flatmate, who happened to be an actor, who was in her bubble, to come up.
Oh God, bubbles.
And to come up and play her boyfriend, basically. And we were literally going back and forth with this day after day before we actually got on the set. And I said, you're just going to have to call Leo and ask him to come up. Now, it just so happens that Leo, her flatmate, is a great actor and quite well known. So actually that turned out pretty well. It was like, oh, it's Leo Bill. Okay, that's pretty good. Yeah, perfect, great, lovely. Thanks for coming up, Leo. If you could just stand here and then kiss Gemma, that'd be grand, lovely. And then we'll buy you a lunch and you can get off. But so that really worked out well. I mean, I didn't know it was him until he came up to the car park that day. And I went, oh, good. It's really good like this. So that was really cool. But that was the kind of negotiation that was happening when we were doing the second two filming days. And of course we were all in masks and stuff like that, So
Single cam?
Yeah. Absolutely.
How was that for you? Because
fine, it's fine. I mean, I know that I direct in multi-camera, but I've got a long history. When I was an AD, I mean, I used to do single camera stuff all the time. I really only settled in EastEnders, because I had to get my feet under the table so that somebody would give me a break directing. So before that, I used to work in single camera drama all the time. So that was okay for me. I mean, it was interesting being single camera on an EastEnders set. That was more interesting because we were shooting in a very familiar scenario that we usually use 3 cameras in, and we were shooting with 1 camera. So that was really interesting because it was like, ooh. And of course, I mean, what was really nice about it was that it really elevated the lighting. Yeah, and so the cafe looked like it. I mean, I've shown that film. People have come to screenings of the film who've worked on EastEnders for years, and they didn't recognise the cafe. And I was like, it's because it's beautifully lit, because it looks like $1 million. It looks really great. So that was slightly more interesting, and I think that also kind of tripped me up a little bit. Because when we embarked upon doing those first 2 days at EastEnders, and Tish, the first, who was with me, who's been my first at EastEnders and was my third at EastEnders when I was first, so me and Tish, we'd done this sort of schedule, like, yeah, fine, we'll bang that off, do that. Yeah, we'll get all that done, and we'll be able to do all of this exterior stuff of him doing this and doing this and doing this. Didn't happen. Just did 2 straight days in that cafe, and I thought, yeah, okay, you sort of slightly didn't adjust your thinking process into the fact that normally
3 take away 2.
Yeah, exactly, 1 camera. Okay, yeah, not going to go quick, not going to go quite so fast, but yeah.
With the short film game, I mean, actors, we always see actors that sort of want to start their career, and one way they do that is by trying to get themselves into short films or by writing their own short films. For you as a director, and I suppose with some of the actors that you worked with on the project as well, what were some of the sort of fundamentals? Because ultimately you've got to think about it not only in terms of telling a great story, but career-wise as well. What were some of the sort of fundamentals that you thought, right, I've got to make sure that I achieve this in order for this film to progress my career as well as those involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is very interesting. I'm not a writer. And I'd wanted to make a short film for years. And I'd been approached to direct various short films beforehand. And I think that a lot of short films are written by actors who want to showcase their own talents, and therefore I don't want to say that that the kind of vanity pieces, but essentially they're writing something for themselves to star in, which they can essentially use as a showreel. And I had rejected the opportunity to work on a lot of films like that simply because I think that they don't work very well. Because there's an imbalance built into
There's always an element of compromise.
Yeah, but there's an imbalance built into them, because if you have a story which is written by somebody to showcase their own talents, they are naturally going to kind of play to their own strengths. But I think it doesn't necessarily give you a very rounded character profile of the other characters in the film. And so what was absolutely spot on about the film that I ended up directing, which was written by Gemma, who's in the film, and she plays the love interest in the film. She had written the film actually really for Jules, but also because she and he worked together as part of an organisation called Access All Areas. So Jules was accompanied on set by Gemma as his creative enabler when he was at Holby, and she would help him with scripts, she would help him with just communication issues and stuff like that, because he's neurodiverse. And just needed a little bit of kind of help with focus sometimes about different things. And so she wrote the film because he'd said to her, when they were sitting around one day on set, that he had always dreamt about being a film star, but he knew that wasn't possible. And when she said, well, why isn't it possible? He said, because of my autism, because I don't see people like me on the screen. And so she wrote the film specifically to showcase him as a neurodiverse actor playing a neurodiverse part, and the scenario was kind of really built up from stories that Jules had told her, other experiences that other neurodiverse people had expressed to her, and experiences that they had shared together. Okay, and so as a result of that, the script is brilliant. It's really, really good, and the story is truthful. And although Gemma's in it, she didn't write it to showcase her own talents. She wrote it to tell this story, which, was about Jules' lived experience. And Jules was able to bring his lived experience to that role. And so the reason that, therefore, the film works is because of that honesty and because of that truthfulness in it. And I think that when we were making it, and certainly from my point of view, when I was making it, I wasn't making it thinking, I've got to make this so that we can all, use it to further our careers. I was making it because I wanted to make the best film I could possibly make. Yeah. And if you go into it with that sensibility, then what you will get out of it is a really good film.
Just honest and
yeah, absolutely, because when you're making a film, a showreel is one thing, because we're going to put that on our spotlight, and I'm going to put it on my website, can have little clips of it, that's great, you know what I mean, it gives people a flavour. But a film has to have a beginning, a middle and an end, and it's got to tell you a story, and it's got to transport you, and you have to make your film. And if you're an actor in a film, you've got to invest that in your character, and that's how you get an award-winning film. Yeah.
How did you find working with Jules? How was your experience working with him?
He's great. He's brilliant. He's got such a vivid imagination. He just goes. He goes. So when you're talking about things that you're going to do in the character and things like this in scenarios, he just starts inventing scenarios. I mean, he'd invent a scenario for you now. He will, as soon as he meets you, he will tell you what animal you are, and then he will just, for me, he's got a whole life for me, which is that, me and my husband met in the swinging 60s, but now maybe the magic has gone out of our lives, and, perhaps we're looking for different things in our relationship. I'm like, yeah I was born in 1972. you know, and me and my husband only been together 10 years, but yeah, okay, sure, yeah, you know, but he just, you know, he creates these imaginary kind of, you know, sort of themes. So sometimes you feel like you've got to come at him with a large butterfly net, and then other times you just want to let him go, you know. But it's about, you know, just finding that balance, you know, in directing him and letting him perform. And he does, in the film, he does just a magnificent job. But what I did want to bring to the film, and what I did want to do with his character, was I wanted to make him a movie star, you know, and I wanted to give him the matinee idol treatment, basically. And so, you know, that's how I approached putting his character on the screen, which was that, you know, he wants to be a movie star, okay, you know, make him a movie star. You know, and so it's just about making him as a character, the everyman, the Tom Hanks, that kind of relatable person. So despite the fact that the character is neurodiverse, you know, if you're neurodiverse or you're neurotypical, when you watch him, you just think, you know what, that's happened to me. You know, I've made a fool of myself in front of a girl. You know, I've done this, I've done that. I've read the signals wrong. And so, you know, that's what I wanted to kind of achieve for him. And I think that when you watch the film, hopefully you'll agree. Yeah, we'll do actually, yeah.
And then finally, we've got our London Masterclass coming up again for 2023. We've got some new tutors on there. And you're going to be directing the Showreels in the final week. Which would be great. It'd be the first time you directing the Showreels here for us, actually, won't it?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So are we.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. We're petrified. No, we are looking forward to it.
That's okay. I'll be gentle with you.
We are.
Yeah. But, you know, even in the workshop stuff, you've got a pretty slick, straight-talking style, which I think is going to be great for the showreels, because one of the elements of the showreel filming week is to give actors the real experience of the set. You know, you've got all the different departments there, you've got script supervisors, you've got the AD, you've got perhaps background action and things going on. I suppose it really harps back to what you expect actors to bring in a professional environment. But when it comes to filming their showreels and working on their scenes in this learning environment, and for perhaps inexperienced actors in some cases, what do you expect them to bring to the scenes on the first day of rehearsals, for example?
Well, I think that, you know, it depends. I know that they get the scripts the weekend before. Yeah. So, for example, I've been on the Masterclass and we've come around on a Friday night and given out the scripts. So I think it's important, as always, to come to the set and know your words. This comes up time and time again when we're on the Masterclass. You know, people will ask it, don't you? And we've had some experiences in the past where, you know, people really haven't known their words. And maybe we've got one scene done, you know, and one person's off the book and one person's on it. And my biggest advice to anybody is you've really got to know your words when you come to the set, okay? And especially if what you're doing is something for yourself, you know. No excuses. And broadly speaking, you've got to be pretty much word perfect, and that's what I'm expecting from you. And the thing is, if you can come and you're able to do that, then we can work on the rest of the stuff, you know. And then it can be a collaboration. Yeah. But if I've got to just watch you reading off a piece of paper, you know, what can I do?
It's an uphill battle.
I think we all understand with a showreel that the important thing at the end of the day is that, you know, you get a reel that looks good quality, that you're able to give a good and truthful performance in, that, you know, that it reflects well upon you, and that it kind of, broadly speaking, should play into your wheelhouse. What we want to do is just find a way to represent you and put you on screen in the way that best reflects your talents and will best serve you moving forward. Nothing's an obstacle, it's only an opportunity. Okay, so, you know, experiment a little bit with your performance if you want to, you know, if it's emotional, go for it. You know, we can always, you know, do another take, we can, you know, try another reading. But, you know, you've just got to come with an open heart. Trust the people around you and commit to what you're doing. you know, and you'll be free to do that if you know your lines, you know, and you're ready to go.
Brilliant. Well, we look forward to having you on the Masterclass later in the year.
Excited. Thank you.
And thanks very much for your time today. It's been fantastic. And thank you for watching another episode of the Actors on Set podcast. We will be back when we get round to filming another one, basically. We've got more in the pipeline. As ever, leave your comments below if you've got any questions coming up for us. Do leave them down below, and keep an eye on actorstudio.co.uk for all of our upcoming courses, including the Masterclass in Screen Acting in Central London with Jane. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For joining us. We will see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.